All right, this is a tutorial on how to create this engraving dollar bill effect right there. You can see when I zoom in, it's got some really cool features and some textures to it. And I'm going to try to demonstrate this for you guys. So I made that as a group already. It's called demo right there. But underneath is my original image right here. So I found this image on, I believe, pexels.com, and I've already created a mask on it, right? So you can disable the mask, and this is what the original image looks like. I'm just going to re-enable the mask, and I just created something quite fast. It's a little fuzzy around the edges. It's not really that important. So this is my my first step, preparing basically this image. Another thing is it's going to be a three-step program kind of thing where I need to create a second image and a third one to be able to create all those effects that you have right here. So let's get started. First, I'm going to create a new document, and I'm going to make it 10 by 10 pixels. That's 72 grayscale, sure. I'm going to go Command 0 or I suppose Control 0 on the PC to make it fit. And I am going to select half horizontally right here. And I'm just going to invert this image. So it's Command I or Control I to invert half of that, right? Deselect this. And then I'm going to go under Filter, Blur, and I'm going to go box blur right here. And it's already set up at 4 pixels, but you can see that if I go 25, 75, 37, etc. So if I go at 1, it just doesn't do very much. So I'm going to set it up at 4. So it creates basically steps from solid black all the way to solid white. And I'm going to make this image into a pattern. So I'm going to go under Edit, go under Define Pattern, and then there's my pattern right here. So I can call it Pattern 1, or I can call it Box Blur 2 right there. Click OK. Then I'm going to create a new document. And I'm going to make it really big this time. I'm going to make it 6,000 by 6,000 pixels. And this is where it gets interesting. I'm going to fill it with a pattern. And I'm going to go and find my pattern right here. Go into my custom patterns. So I'm going to find my box blur number 2. And I'm going to just keep everything normal at 100%. So it creates, if I zoom in, creates this crazy pattern right here. So I'm like 500% zoomed in, right? So it's going to keep it zoomed out a little bit. So it creates that basically just those fine lines right across the board over the whole image. Then I'm going to apply the wave filter. I'm going to filter right here, go into distort, and wave right here. And I'm going to go make sure that this is set up in sine right here. I'm just going to move that in the center. I'm going to put it 1, and I'm going to change those numbers right there to 149 minimum, 150 maximum, and then amplitude and scale, I'm going to set them up as 49 and 50 on both, 49 horizontal, vertical on both right there. I wish there was a preview button, but this is what you're going to end up with. You end up with those lines right here. So it's really hard on the eyes, but this is what it does. Then I'm going to select all, so Control A or Command A, right? And I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. I'm going to create a new solid color fill layer, and I'm going to make it 50% gray. So you can go into the HSB right here, the brightness, you can make it 50%, and it creates a 50% gray layer right here. And I'm going to go into my, mask right there. So this is my solid color. I'm going to go into my mask, and I'm going to go in Alt or Option. Alt on the PC, and Option, click on the the Macintosh, and I'm in mask preview mode. And then I go Command V or Control V to paste the pattern that we copied over. So now this is creating basically a mask with the same pattern on top. Now that that's done, I'm going to rotate my mask. So I'm just going to go Command T or Free Transform or Control T, and I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to rotate it 90-degree clockwise, and click Enter right there. So your wavy pattern is now, as you can see, vertical. I'm going to change the opacity to 90%, so you can start to see that the pattern is overlaying the other one on top of one another, right? So you're starting to have this crazy checkered wavy pattern. Then I'm going to merge my layers. So I can go into my little flyover menu right there, and I'm going to go flatten image. Now I'm going to go into my filter, distort, and I'm going to hit the ripple effect right here. I'm going to set it, as 15% is pretty good. You can go really, so as you can see, you can preview it right here. The more you do it, the wackier it gets. So I just want to have just a little bit of texture, right? So I just want to have, like a 15% or so. Something simple. Size large, sure, and click OK. And you can see that it just kind of created a little bit of almost like a 3D little bit of a random pattern. So it's starting to get there. And that is it for the texture, the magic texture. So I'm going to select all again and copy. I'm going to switch over back to my image right here. And what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to put a background, and I'm going to make a gradient pattern, make it a gray, black to gray, faint background, but I'm just going to put that in the background right here. So it's behind this gentleman right there. And, it's already masked, so it just kind of fades away. I'm going to try to see if I can actually change that a little bit. So I don't want to have it solid white at the top. I'm going to make it a little bit like a little bit of a light gray, and then the dark black as well. I'm just going to make it a bit of a dark gray instead. So it goes from light gray to medium or dark gray. Cool. I'm just going to close that. And this is where the magic begins. I want to have my image, the photograph there, in black and white. So you can go under Image, Adjustment, and hue, hit hue and saturation. This is the manual way to do it, and you just desaturate the whole thing, and this is your image in basically black and white grayscale. Or you can go to Command or Control U to get to the hue saturation panel, or you can do Command or Control Shift U to desaturate automatically right there. That's the shortcut. Now I'm going to paste that texture that we copied on top of this layer. Just Command V or Control V just to paste it on top. You can see that that's the edge of it right there. Just going to zoom out a little bit. You can see the edge of it. So I'm just going to use my Move tool. So click the V key on your keyboard, and I'm just going to move it over so it's completely covering the whole image. And I'm going to change the blending mode. Right now it's a normal at 100% opacity. I'm going to change the blending mode to hard mix. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and it's starting to look like an old cool engraving, like an old postage stamp kind of thing, right? So first I'm going to name this layer Engraving. And to soften the edges of this image a little bit, what we're going to do here is we're going to select the image, of course, layer, go under Filter, and pick Stylize, and go to Oil Paint right here. And you're going to crank up all those numbers right here. You can see that what it does right there. I'm just going to crank it to 10 on the stylization, cleanliness, scale, everything, bristle detail, and I'm going to turn off the lighting option right here. So you can see kind of soften things up a little bit, right? It starts to get a little bit softer on the edges a little bit. And it's interesting what it does to the beard right here. You know, the preview before and after, it's starting to look really cool. Click OK. And next is I want to flatten the image a little bit, just to change the contrast a little bit, because it's quite high. There's a lot of blacks and a lot of really highlights. So I go under Image, Adjustment, Shadows and Highlights right here. And as you can see with the preview turned on right here, if I bring the shadows all the way up, you know, you can see the difference what it does. It kind of flattens it a little bit, makes it a little bit wider. And then same thing here with the highlights. I can bring it down, you know. So I have control of what I want to achieve right here, just doing the highlights and the shadows right here. So I'm going to keep it kind of, you know, about right here or so. Let's see, highlights. No, you don't want to keep the highlights low. And I don't want to even, there you go. So yeah, about, you know, 15 and 50%. There you go, give or take. And that's really, you know, depending on the image that you have, of course, you'll get different results. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this layer. So you can right-click on it and right-click on your layer. You can duplicate your layer, or what you can do is drag it to the little plus icon right here, or go Command or Control J to make a duplicate. And on this duplicate layer right there, I'm going to apply again my filters, that oil paint filter again. So I'm going to do it about 2 or 3 times. And again. And one more time, just to soften the edges a little bit, just to get a little bit funky right here. Right, so you can see that's my original, and that's the one that has all those oil paint effects on it. So it gets a little bit weird around the eyes, and some of the details are lost. So what we can do is we can work a little bit in the mask just to reveal a little bit of the image that is below it. And I'm going to do that filter actually a few more times again. If I select this layer right here, you know, oil paint, to repeat your filter, you can go Command Shift F or Control Shift F right here. And I'll do it about 2 or 3 more times right here. So that really mushes the image down quite a lot. It makes it quite fuzzy. And that's kind of the effect that I want, but I want to bring some details back into my image from below right there, right? So if I hide this, you can see that there's a lot more details in the eyes and around the mustache and the nose, maybe some of the wrinkles on the forehead. So all I want to do is I want to go back into my mask, hit B to get into my brush, and right-click on it, make sure that I have my hardness down to 0. I have my size to 400%, 400 pixels. I mean, yeah, but something like this, 160 or so, just to see the size of my brush right here, just to be able to manage my eyeballs right there. And then I'm just going to brush in a little bit, just over the eyes right here, and then the details come back, right? Basically, right. So same thing around the nostrils, maybe a little bit of the mustache right here, you know. Bringing in a little bit, just click a few more times, just to bring a little bit of that sharpness, tip of the nose, and maybe a little bit of the wrinkles in between the eyeballs, maybe a little bit on the eyebrows right here, and really bring the size of my brush. I'm using the open square bracket and the closing square bracket to reduce or to increase the size of my brush, and I'm just gonna, you know, just click a couple times. So there we have a little bit more personality to this face right here, and then some of the details are kind of came back really nicely right here. So remember, I haven't changed the engraving layer right here. It's still pretty much the same size. So I can always hit Command T or Control T to free transform. I'm going to zoom out a little bit and see if I actually decrease or increase the size, the scale of it, and get a little bit more details. But in this case, it starts to get really, really, really too fine. So I want to keep it, quite large. But what I want to do, because my waves are basically running across horizontally, I want to maybe try to find an angle and rotate it a little bit. So I go into one of those nodes right there and I rotate it, let's say 45-degree angle or 30-degree angle. And maybe it kind of follows a little bit of the curves around the eyes and those wrinkles and see what that does. And you can, free transform it a little bit, and see what it does to the face. And I think I see some better details around the eyes and the cheeks there. So I'm just going to keep it at about, 21 degrees and 21 degree angle. I'm just going to increase this thing a little bit just so it goes over the edge all the way to the top right there. I'm going to click OK on that. So it's just, trying to find a bit of a different angle to it so it doesn't look too mechanical, basically. We're trying to do a little bit of an illustration here. So what I can do here as well is I can increase or decrease the level of my image right here. So I can create an adjustment layer, levels right here, levels right here, and I want to make sure that it's below my engraving, so it's only affecting my image, not the engraving. And by sliding those around, right, you can see that there's, I have a little bit more control over it. And if I want to darken it up, and then I see a lot of textures around the eyes that kind of, disappear or appear. So I want to see, how much I can actually, keep good contrast, but show a little bit more details around their face. And, it's just a fine tuning it just ever so slightly, right? I'm just going 5, 97, and 232 just to finalize those tiny little details that reappear right there in the cheeks. So it's not completely solid black. So what you can do with this layer, these adjustment layer properties as well, is you can play with the white point. You can bring it up quite a lot like this. And also, you can also change the whole overall black output as well. So that really brings out a lot of the details right here, and a lot of the black spots right here. Then you start to have a little bit of textures as well. Anyways, you can play around with that as much as you want, and till you're happy with the results that you have. So now that you've done those adjustments to your image, you can see that when you zoom in, it's a little crunchy, right? It gets a little bit of those soft, some really hard pixels around. And so what you can do for that is going to your engraving layer, and instead of changing the overall opacity, which would just make it a little fuzzy and kind of semi-translucent, and that would look a little crappy, what you want to do is you want to bring the fill value right here to, let's say, about 90, 95 or so. So it just softens up the edges just ever so slightly, right? So that's a good trick to use, so you can soften up the edges of those pixels so they're not too crunchy. So now that we have some really cool result already in this image right here, we're going to introduce some color. So we're going to go into the bottom of your layer panel right here, and we're going to do a gradient map. And then we're going to introduce some color in here. So any of those nodes that you have right here, you can change the color. So we're going to just bring a color, let's say about in the green. So I'm just going to move that slider right in here, and then pick a dark green in there, maybe even darker. There you go. So it looks like money. That's the idea. And then my white node right there, I'm going to double click on that. And then same thing, but I'm going to bring a lighter green in there. So almost white, just I'm just going to make sure that it's a nice green. You can go teal, you can go pink if you want. It's going to be absolutely awful. But I mean, if you want to do something really psychedelic, you're more than welcome to. So here I'm going to go maybe with a little bit of, yeah, exactly, like a little bit of a beige kind of, off-tone kind of dirty old paper right here. And you can go as crazy as you want. You have some presets right in there as well. You have some pinks and purples and blues. So you can pick any of those to end up with some very interesting results right there. But I'll let you exercise your creativity right here. I'm just going to click OK on that. So here we are. We have this image. It's starting to look really cool, but it looks a little bit kind of boring. So it looks a little too flat. So we're going to introduce a little bit of texture to it. So I'm going to switch over to my Google Chrome right there, and I'm going to texturelab.org. It's got a lot of really cool textures to choose from. You have different paper textures in there, and I don't want a paper texture. I don't want the folds or the crinkles or something that is a little bit too soft kind of thing. I want to have a hard grunge. So there you go. I'm going to have a grunge texture, and I'm going to pick this guy right here. I'm going to grab the large one, and I'm going to download that guy. Opening that file right there, you can see it's got a lot of textures. I'm going to use my move tool right here, drag it from here, from this tab over to my dollar bill portrait texture, and then let go of my mouse right when I'm on top of it. I'm just going to go back to Control 0 to fit, and then Control T to free transform. And this time I'm going to rotate it that way. I'm going to make it much bigger, like so. I'm going to just randomly scale it. I'm going to disable the locked width and height in my control bar right here, so I can scale it the way I want, and just kind of add some texture right here. So it's going to be pretty rough, and of course it has to be like right on top of everything, right? And just change your blending by changing your blending mode to as you can see, darken, multiply, etc. So the image is starting to shine through. So if I go into lighten or screen, right, in this case, I want to have that happening right there. And then I can change my opacity or my fill. Anyways, I'll let you explore that as well on your own. So it's got a lot of texture, and I want to bring it down a little bit. Maybe that's a little too much. I'm going to rotate it the other way around, so I have the texture more in the background and not over his face too much. And I'm just going to bring it down a little bit, maybe change the fill or the opacity altogether. Let's see. Yeah, it's getting a little bit better right there, about 50 or so. Same thing with the fill. Bring it down a little bit, so it's just a light and subtle texture right there. So I think that'll do just fine right here. So what I want to do as well is it's a little bit flat with the background. So what I can do, I can add a little bit of a glow to this image right there. I just want to grab this image and then layer style outer glow right here, and then it's happening just behind, just you can see, turn on and off the preview right here. Make sure that your blend mode is on screen. I have an opacity of 30, give or take. The higher the opacity, the bigger the glow. So I don't want that. I want something quite subtle. I want to be at 20 maybe. Yeah, something like that. I can change my color right here. So right now I have it on really light green, but if I switch over just to a darker color, you have a little bit more control of that, right? So you have a little bit more control of your glow, basically. That's the idea. So you pick a medium kind of color, and then that way you can control it a little bit. So it just, ever so slightly. You can change your spread a little bit. The size of it right now is at 210 pixels. If I bring it down a little bit and increase the size, it creates a little bit more like a solid outline. And you can see that I haven't masked my image very well because I have some leftover pixels on my left-hand side here that are appearing. So this is just a mask problem. So badly done. But you know what? Something like this along that line, it's just creates a little bit of a glow around him. There you go. And click OK. And there it is. You have a crazy cool image like this that looks like a mechanical engraving on a dollar bill. So it's a cool effect. It's a multiple step thing to do, but you get some really cool results out of that. And that is your Photoshop tutorial for the day.